The desperate cry. The marketplace was silent, but not with peace. It was silent with fear and hunger. Once it was a place of trade and laughter, but now broken stalls and shattered lights stood like bones of a dead city. Aliens with hollow eyes and weak bodies wandered, searching for scraps. Among them was a mother, her hands shaking as she held her little boy close to her chest. His skin was pale, his eyes too weak to even cry. She had nothing left, no food, no family, no hope. She stood before a cruel merchant, a heavy creature with greedy eyes. The merchant looked at her child as if he was nothing more than trash. Her voice broke as she spoke. "Take my life, just feed my son." The words echoed through the empty market. A few aliens stopped, some laughed, some turned away. They had seen suffering so long that mercy had no meaning. The merchant smiled coldly. "Your life is worth less than a meal, but maybe I can find some use for you." The boy coughed weakly, his little hand clutching his mother's torn dress. Her heart broke, but she was ready to give herself away if it meant her son would live one more day. But in the crowd, someone else was watching. A human, tall and quiet, stood at the edge of the broken stalls. He had come to this alien city as a traveler, searching for supplies. He had seen war, he had seen cruelty, but what he saw now shook him more deeply. The mother's desperate cry reached him like a blade to his chest. He could not move at first, only stare at the hopeless scene. He remembered Earth, where mothers would shield their children even in the darkest times. And he thought to himself, no child should starve while others turn away. The merchant stretched his hand, ready to drag the mother away. The crowd looked with empty eyes, none willing to stop him. But suddenly, the sound of footsteps broke the silence. The human walked forward, his boots echoing on the broken stone. The mother looked up, confused, her tears still falling. The merchant frowned. "Human, this is not your matter. Walk away if you value your life." But the human did not stop. He knelt before the child, pulling out a small packet of food from his pack. He opened it and gently placed it in the boy's hands. The boy's eyes widened with weak surprise, and he tried to eat slowly, his little hands trembling. The mother gasped, shocked. Why would you do this?" The merchant roared. "That food is wasted on worthless mouths, human." The crowd murmured, some laughing, some whispering. But the human's voice was calm, steady. "No mouth is worthless. No life is worthless." The mother stared at him, not knowing if she should trust or fear this stranger. Her whole life had been betrayal and cruelty. But here, for the first time, someone gave instead of taking. The child leaned against the human's arm, whispering softly, "Don't leave us." The human's jaw tightened. He looked at the merchant. "If you want to fight, take it with me, but they will not suffer anymore." The marketplace grew tense, silence heavy in the air. The guards of the merchant shifted, their weapons ready. The mother's heart pounded. She knew what it meant to defy the powerful in this place. But she also felt a spark she thought she had lost forever. Hope. The human stood tall, his shadow falling over the fragile pair. The alien crowd looked, some mocking, some curious, but deep inside something began to stir. They had never seen anyone stand for the weak like this, especially not a human. The mother pressed her forehead against her child, whispering prayers of gratitude. Her body trembled, but her soul, for the first time in years, felt a light. Because a stranger had answered her desperate cry. The human's choice. The crowd did not cheer, it did not clap, it only watched. The marketplace, filled with shadows and broken voices, now had a strange tension in the air. An outsider had broken the rule. A human had chosen kindness in a place where kindness was weakness. Whispers spread. Why would a human risk his life for an alien child? Others spat on the ground. He is a fool. He will die soon. But the mother, holding her son close, could not look away from the man who stood between her and the cruel merchant. The merchant's face burned with anger, his pride wounded before his slaves and his customers. He pointed his clawed hand at the human. "Leave now, or you will never leave at all." The human did not answer quickly. He looked down at the boy who was eating the small ration with slow, careful bites. Every chew of the weak child felt like thunder in the silent market. The human's eyes softened for a moment, and then hardened with resolve. He turned to the merchant, his voice firm. "If one meal threatens your power, then your power is built on nothing." The guards shifted, their weapons ready. The mother gasped. pulling her child closer. Please, don't fight. They will kill you. But the human shook his head slowly. I cannot walk away, not now. He stepped forward, placing himself between the guards and the fragile pair. The merchant laughed coldly. You think you can protect them? You are one man. The human replied. One man is enough to say no. The crowd began to stir, some mocking, some whispering, some wondering. For years they had seen mothers cry, children starve, slaves beaten, and no one dared to resist. But now they saw a human standing with nothing but courage in his hands. The child tugged at his mother's sleeve, whispering, Mama, is he an angel? Tears rolled down her face. She could not answer. The human's voice rose, not loud, but steady. I will not let them suffer, not while I breathe. The merchant's laughter stopped, replaced with rage. He ordered the guards, take him down, make him bleed, and then I will show this woman what happens when she begs. The mother's scream filled the market, but the human did not move. Instead, he raised his arm, ready to face what was coming. For him, this was no longer about food, or even survival. It was about a choice, a simple choice. To stand for the weak, or to stay silent like everyone else. And the human had made his choice. Shadows of hunger. Night began to fall over the alien city. Broken lanterns flickered weakly, throwing long shadows across the ruined streets. The mother sat in a corner with her child pressed against her, while the human stood nearby, keeping watch. He had given away his food, his energy, and even risked his life, but still danger had not passed. The guards had pulled back for now, but their eyes followed from the darkness, waiting for the merchant's order. The child ate slowly, every bite like a treasure. But the human noticed something. The boy was not only hungry, he was sick. His thin body shook, his skin pale, his breath shallow. The mother's trembling voice broke the silence. He hasn't eaten for 3 days. His father was killed in the mines. My people threw us away because we were weak. She covered her face with her hands, ashamed of her own words. The human did not reply quickly. He listened, and his silence felt heavier than judgment. Finally, he spoke, his voice low. On my world, hunger was once the greatest enemy too, but we learned to fight it, not with weapons, but with care. The mother raised her head, her eyes filled with tears. Care does not exist here, only survival. The human's jaw tightened. He looked at the boy and then at her. Then maybe it begins today. But the shadows were not kind. The merchant's spies crept closer, reporting to their master. Word was spreading in the market that a human had defied the system. Some aliens mocked the story, some ignored it, but some felt something they had buried long ago, hope. The merchant, however, felt only rage. He swore the human would regret this choice. The boy coughed, his voice so soft it almost disappeared in the wind. Mama, are we safe now? The mother pulled him close, her tears falling into his hair. I don't know, my son. I don't know. But the human placed a hand gently on the boy's shoulder, steady and warm. Yes, as long as I stand, you are safe. The night grew colder. Hunger and fear wrapped the broken city. And yet, in one corner of darkness, a fragile light began to glow. Not from fire, not from lanterns, but from the simple courage of a human who chose compassion over silence. Stand against cruelty. The morning did not bring peace. It brought the sound of boots and weapons against stone. The merchant had returned with his guards, their armor shining cruelly in the weak sunlight. The marketplace filled again, but this time not with trade, with fear. Everyone knew what happened to those who defied the merchant. Everyone came to watch, whispering that the human would not live long. The mother clutched her son tightly, her hands shaking. She wanted to run, but she had nowhere to go. Her eyes searched for the human, and there he stood, calm, steady, as if he had expected this moment. The boy looked up at him with wide, frightened eyes. Will they hurt us again? The human knelt beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. Not while I breathe. The merchant's voice thundered through the square. This human thinks he can break my law. He thinks he can protect what is mine. He pointed at the mother and child. They are worthless slaves. Their lives belong to me. The crowd was silent. No one dared to speak against him. But the human's reply was clear, his voice strong. No life belongs to you. No mother. No child. The guards stepped forward, weapons raised. The mother's heart raced. Her mind screamed for the human to run. But he did not move. His body became a shield between them and the child. The crowd gasped, one man standing against many. The merchant laughed. "You will die for nothing, human." The human answered, "If kindness is nothing to you, then I will gladly die for it." The tension was sharp as a blade. Every eye in the market watched, every breath held. Some aliens felt shame burn in their hearts, remembering the times they too had looked away. The boy clung to his mother, whispering, "He's not afraid." And for the first time, the mother felt her fear change into something else. Not safety, not yet, but courage. Because if one human could stand, then maybe silence was no longer the only choice. Risking everything. The first strike came fast. A guard lunged forward with a steel blade, the sound of metal cutting the air. The human moved quickly, blocking the attack with his arm, pain flashing across his face, but his stance unbroken. The crowd gasped. No one had ever seen a traveler stand against the merchant's men. Blood marked his sleeve, but he did not step back. The mother cried out, clutching her child tighter, her heart breaking at the sight. She wanted to run to him, to beg him to stop, but her legs would not move. The boy's small voice shook. "Mama, he's fighting for us." Tears burned her eyes, because she knew it was true. The guards circled, striking from every side. The human fought with nothing but his body, his courage, and a broken piece of wood he had grabbed from the ground. Every movement was desperate yet powerful. He was outnumbered, but his spirit made the air heavy. The merchant shouted in rage, "Break him! Show the fool what happens when mercy is shown." The human's breath grew heavy, wounds burning across his body. But his eyes never left the mother and child. Every strike he blocked, every step he took, was to keep them behind him, safe. The crowd began to murmur, whispers turning into something else. Not laughter, not mockery, but wonder. They had seen cruelty every day, but never sacrifice like this. One alien whispered, "Why would he bleed for them?" Another answered softly, "Because he sees what we forgot." The mother trembled, torn between fear and awe. The boy, though weak, reached out his hand toward the human, as if giving him strength. The fight grew harder. The human stumbled, blood dripping onto the stones, yet he forced himself up again. His voice, hoarse but steady, cut through the chaos. "I will not give them to you, even if it costs me everything." The words struck deeper than any blade. The crowd fell silent. The guards hesitated. Even the merchant's smile faded. Because in that broken marketplace, they saw something they could not destroy. A human risking everything. Not for power, not for wealth, but for two lives that the world had called worthless. Kindness that breaks chains. The human fell to one knee, blood running down his arm. The guards raised their weapons for the final strike, the merchant's laughter echoing across the square. But then something happened that no one expected. A child's cry rose from the crowd, not the alien boy he had saved, but another, watching with wide, frightened eyes. The cry broke the silence like thunder. One mother in the crowd stepped forward, pulling her child behind her, her voice shaking. "Stop this. He fights for what we lost long ago." The guards froze, confused. The merchant roared at her, "Silence, or you will join them." But more voices rose, one after another. An old alien whispered, "My son starved, and I did nothing, but he does not look away." A young worker muttered, "If he can stand bleeding, why can't we stand speaking?" The human struggled back to his feet, swaying but unbroken. He faced the merchant, his voice weak but clear. "You rule with fear, but fear ends when one person chooses hope." The mother he had saved cried silently, because she knew he was not just protecting her anymore. He was breaking something much bigger. The merchant shouted for his guards to finish him, but the guards hesitated. For the first time, they looked at each other with doubt in their eyes. The human opened his pouch, pulling out the last of his supplies, a small stack of credits, and his only weapon. He dropped them on the ground. "Take everything I have, my food, my wealth, even my blade. Just let them walk free." The crowd gasped, because they knew what it meant. He had nothing left, yet he still gave. The mother fell to her knees, her tears soaking the dirt. "Why? Why would you give all this for us?" The human's voice was soft, almost breaking, because no mother should beg for her child's life, not in any world. The marketplace was no longer silent. It was alive with whispers, voices trembling not with fear, but with something forgotten, courage. And in that moment, kindness cracked the chains of cruelty. A new home. The marketplace did not look the same anymore. Where silence once ruled, whispers of change now filled the air. The guards lowered their weapons, some stepping back, some even turning away. The merchant screamed in rage, but his power slipped from his hands like sand through broken fingers. For the first time, no one obeyed. The mother held her son close, tears streaming down her face, but her eyes were no longer only afraid. They carried something new, dignity. The human bent down, helping the boy to his feet, his voice soft but steady. "You will not bow again, not while I live." The boy's thin arms wrapped around him, holding tight. The mother whispered, her voice shaking, "You did not just save us, you gave us back a reason to live." The human led them away from the broken square, step by step, his body weak, but his spirit unshaken. They walked through the ruined streets until they reached the edge of the colony. There stood his small home, built with human hands and quiet resilience. It was not large, not rich, but it was safe. Inside, the boy ate real food, warm bread and clean water, for the first time without fear. He laughed softly, a sound so small yet so powerful that the mother broke down in tears again. She knelt before the human, trembling. "I have nothing to give you, nothing to repay you." The human shook his head, lifting her gently back to her feet. "You owe me nothing. You only need to live, and let your son grow strong." The boy whispered, his voice filled with wonder, "Mama, he gave us a home." And in the days that followed, others began to come. Whispers spread across the city that the human gave hope where there was none. Mothers who had lost everything came to him, the weak, the broken, the forgotten. They found not wealth, not weapons, but kindness. And kindness was enough to light a fire stronger than cruelty. The merchant's name slowly faded, but the story of one human did not. They called him not a warrior, not a savior, but something greater, a reminder that true strength was never in chains or fear. It was in compassion, in the courage to give when there was nothing left to give. The mother, now no longer trembling, stood outside his home one evening, watching her son play in safety. Her eyes lifted to the stars, whispering softly, "Once I begged for death, but a human gave me life." And in that moment, she knew, hope had returned, not only for her, but for all who dared to believe.